Hello and welcome back to the Final Whistle. I'm Sam Taylor, the Lewiston Tribune's Wazoo beat writer, and with me is Trevor John, our Vandals beat writer. How's it going, Trevor?
Good, Sam. How are you?
Pretty good, and I think I'm doing as well as the Cougs. So they are on cloud nine right now because the Washington State Cougars are going bowling for the 9th time in the last 10 full seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. They beat Oregon State this weekend, right? 32-8. It was the final score. Tell me about, Wazoo and what happened there in this game.
Yeah, so Wazoo entering the Pac-2 championship, unofficial Pac-2 championship, having already lost to Oregon State 10-7 down in Corvallis. The two teams played twice this year for the first time in that individual matchup since 1945.
Wow.
And so I think that's the stat, that's the year. And so it's been quite some time since that happened for either program. And it's pretty unique in the modern scope of college football. And so, but the Beavers, led by former Idaho coach and former WSU assistant Rob Akey, beat the Cougars 10-7 at the beginning of the month on November 1st. And then 29 days later, they met in Pullman. And it was a much different game from the get-go. Washington State chipped away. They took a 6-0 lead towards the end of the first quarter, and then, or the beginning of the second quarter. And then they had a 19-0 halftime lead and eventually won 32-8. And so Wazoo was kind of in the driver's seat the whole time. They were boosted by a tremendous game from Tony Freeman. As a receiver, he was great. The leading receiver, 7 catches for 84 yards, but his real money was made when he donned the number 39 jersey instead of his typical number 0 jersey as their punt returner and racked up a career high and WSU single game record 169 punt return yards, which surpassed the previous record of 167. And so it was quite the day for Tony Freeman. The reason he had to wear number 39 instead of his typical 0 was that Anthony Polano, a linebacker for the Cougs who also wears number 0, was on the field on the coverage unit. So you can't have, two Cougs and wearing 0 at the same time, so wearing the same number at the same time. And so he had switched out, and he knew this was going to happen. They had practiced the whole week of switching out jerseys. Originally he was in 37, but it was too snug of a fit. And so he put on 39. It was a good thing, too, because he had to do it 6 times. Got 6 chances. And somehow the Beavers kept punting to him, and he kept getting those opportunities. He even fumbled and gave up. I had a 59 return and then fumbled the ball, and the Beavers recovered. But the Cougars were so dominant that didn't matter.
Yeah, speaking of that, their defense has been dominant all year. It's been a consistent group, besides 2 weeks maybe that they struggled with. But the offense clicked in this game. What really worked for this offense?
Well, a bunch of short fields don't hurt. Freeman set them up pretty nicely with some 26-yard drive, and then 30-some yard drive, a 45-yard drive for touchdown drive, I believe. And so Freeman was getting them to the plus side of the field, and with those opportunities, they were making the most of it. Their run game was clicking. Kirby Voorhees and Angel Johnson broke out for a 50-yard run and then had the 2-yard touchdown to play later. It's been a tough season for Angel Johnson. He went from averaging 7.6 yards a carry the last 2 seasons at South Dakota State to averaging somewhere around sub 3 yards per carry and just getting 226 yards. Against the Vandals, he had -4 yards. It was a really tough start, and it really didn't get much better from there. And obviously just 30-yard games at most. And
Kirby Voorhees took over the role.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Kirby Voorhees took over the role in about October. And so when Jimmy Rogers, Washington State coach Jimmy Rogers, was asked about Johnson's touchdown, he got a little emotional and said, it's been a tough year for Angel Johnson. He came here with all the coaches and the players from South Dakota State wanting to make a difference, wanting to make an impact on the FBS level, and it just didn't work out. And some of that obviously was just circumstances, the O-line blocking schemes would break down around him, and just things would not work out even when he was doing the right things. And so it's kind of emblematic of a Wazoo season where you had the defense just play lights out all year long for the most part, and the offense continued to struggle and give away games. Ole Miss was going to be a loss, but it was a close game, and but give away games like the Virginia game, the James Madison game, where James Madison game Eckhouse threw a pick 6. That was the difference of that game, among other things. And then you have the Virginia game, which just a weird debacle at the end, which we've talked about plenty of times. But you've Wazoo in those 3 to AP Top 25 road trips, they lost by a combined deficit of 12 points, and so really 12 points. Plus 1 more for each to win, really separates Wazoo from a good season, 6-6, going to a bowl game, to a great season. The way Rogers sees it, he put a number to it. We should be talking about a 10-2 season right now, Instead, we're talking about a 6-6 season. And so, some disappointment there and some expectations of what they could do better, but a lot of pride and obviously being able to earn a second game.
A little thing that you mentioned in your column today is like Rogers said he's never lost 6 games in his career.
Yeah.
But just going on a little bit away from that also as well, going bowling. So what are some of the bowls that the Cougs are up for, and what's the possibilities there?
Yeah, so they're still rocking with the Pac-12 affiliated bowls. That contract's this is the last year, but potentially it gets a little complicated. They could have that for next year. But basically, long story short, since they're 6-6 and finished, they get picked with all the traditional Pac-12 teams that are bowl eligible. And so obviously you might have like Oregon going to the college football playoff. Then you have schools like Washington, like Cal, and I forget the other schools that are eligible, but those other schools that were in the Pac-12 also being picked, and so Wazoo's kind of on the bottom of that ladder, which means that the LA Bowl, which is now like the Rob Gronkowski Bowl, formerly Jimmy Kimmel Bowl, played in SoFi Stadium, home of the Rams and Chargers, could be an option. New Mexico Bowl could be an option. A popular pick that some outlets are projecting is New Mexico. Coach Jason X, New Mexico, who he just got an extension from New Mexico after a 9-3 year in the Mountain West, versus Rogers and the Cougs. And so they both worked on the same South Dakota State staff together in 2016, also with Jake Dickert. It was fun small world in 2016 in Brookings. And so that's a potential bowl. You got the LA Bowl, you got the New Mexico Bowl. Hawaii Bowl could be on the table as projected from some outlets. That'd be Christmas Eve in Hawaii. And I think
the Vegas Bowl?
The Vegas Bowl, yeah, is also kind of, they have an outside chance for that. That one's kind of higher up on the ladder, but they're still, like, the Vegas Bowl could still pick them, I think.
We'll find out next Sunday, correct?
Yeah, we'll find out next Sunday.
Okay. Well, and then just anything else that you have with the Cougs?
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the underrated heroes, unsung heroes from this game was center Kyle Martin, sophomore center. Starting in place of Brock Dew. Brock Dew, great decorated career at Washington State. It was kind of heartbreaking to see him, wheel out from the locker room to the field for senior day celebrations on a scooter. Essentially, he injured his foot last week against James Madison, re-injured it, and so it was kind of heartbreaking to see that. He's started nearly 40 games for the Cougs and been a real cog at center. But Kyle Martin, sophomore, filled in quite nicely. And earlier this week, the week leading up to the game, Kyle Martin received a scholarship from Washington State ahead of his first career start. And so he did a great job. The offensive line did not allow a sack. That was another huge part of the offensive success, and kept the pocket pretty clean for Zevi Eckhouse. And Eckhouse was able to throw a touchdown, run for a touchdown, and not throw any interceptions. He did 11 or so this year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Just moving over to the Vandals a little bit, we'll just hit a quick few topics. They fired 3 coaches, or 3 coaches mutually left, possibly. Matt Linehan, the offensive coordinator, an Idaho legend. They were unhappy with their offense, and so they decided to mutually part ways with Matt Linehan. And then defense-wise, the defensive line coach, they were dead last in the Big Sky in sacks, and it wasn't particularly close. They only had 15 sacks this season, so it made sense to let him go. And then Lance Dunbar, the running backs coach, they let him go as well. The running backs kind of struggled this year. There's a few of the guys that kind of went off, but it was a tough year for running backs otherwise.
Yeah. Do you think, obviously, the position coaches the position coach shakeups are particularly interesting? Obviously, a position coach can make a huge impact. There's a reason that they exist and have jobs like that. And so, what do you think is kind of the upside of who Ford could find? Maybe not particular names, but the upside of having a new voice in the running backs room and a new voice in the DL room.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah. Ford chose this staff, but I also wonder how much he kind of adopted the staff rather than chose his own staff. Where it's these guys maybe were with the Vandals before, and then Ford just kind of promoted them. With Linehan, he was a wide receivers coach last year, and then he got moved over to the quarterbacks coach and offensive coordinator. But now Ford gets to choose his own guy, gets to choose the guy who fits his scheme. And same thing with the position coaches, where Ford can choose the exact guys that he wants for these positions. And maybe some guys were disappointing last year and they wanted to improve this year.
Yeah, he also has the advantage of a full hiring cycle. Obviously, Ford was hired. Eck took the FCS. Eck stayed through the FCS playoffs, which the Vandals were still alive this time last year, and so he didn't end up going to New Mexico until just before Christmas. And so it was, Ford coming in after the holidays, and over a month later from where he is now. And so now he has, you've everyone is moving. From the high profile Lane Kiffin moves from Ole Miss to LSU to all these position coaches. From all across college football are also moving around depending on these coaching shakeups. And so there's a lot of people out there probably looking for jobs in the coaching world. And so Ford's kind of got his full the full cycle to make those choices, right?
Yeah, I'll be frank too. I have no idea who they could hire as their offensive coordinator, running backs coach, or D-line coach. I have truly no idea. It made sense to me that they kept most of their defensive staff. The defense is pretty good this year. But trying to fix the offense is pretty important this year. But again, no idea who they could hire. I don't really know who's available for the Vandals. But definitely could be a shakeup.
Yeah, it was interesting with Linehan. Obviously, he called it in his statement a mutual parting of ways, and he just full on acknowledged. He just said that after I was demoted after the UC Davis game, right? Or was it ahead or after?
Yeah, after the
UC Davis game. So that was like weeks ago, and so he spent basically the last month of the season, or maybe a little less than that, not calling plays.
Yes.
And so what was that dynamic like? I mean, obviously you kind of had some inklings of what might have been happening, but what did you observe? How did that impact the Vandals?
Well, first off, like you saw Linehan, who he was usually in the booth. He was on the sideline without a play sheet, working with the quarterbacks. That's a little bit of a telltale sign where this guy's not calling plays. When it came to crunch time, when they were actually calling plays, Linehan's just on the sideline. He's not working with the play. He's not working with the play sheet at all, or really have a headset on. So a few weeks ago against Sacramento State, we noticed it first, and then I kept asking questions about who's calling plays. Obviously, you're not going to out your guys. So Ford was pretty diplomatic when it came to that. Wasn't super clear when it came to some of those answers. And then after the Idaho State game, I asked who was calling the plays. And he said he wasn't comfortable answering that question at that time. So that was pretty much the answer there, where it's like Linehan's not calling plays. But the Vandals offense struggled a little bit more without Linehan. I don't know, just something wasn't clicking for the offense near the end of the season. Linehan wasn't clicking either, so a change needed to be made, and you noticed it on the field as well.
Yeah. And so, I mean, there's hopes depending on who they get. Obviously, the expectation is that they'll keep Joshua Wood, but who knows what happens. And with a lot of the other offensive personnel and the entire team, do you think the transfer portal will ravage the Vandals roster that much?
I don't. I think that this is a pretty tight team. I think Wood really loves Ford, and Ford really loves Wood. So I think that's pretty safe there. But there's a few guys that could leave. Matthias McLean, defensive lineman, sophomore defensive lineman. He had a great year. He was an honorable mention. Dylan Lane is a guy, linebacker who could leave. He led the Vandals in tackles this year. He's a junior. And then also Caleb Rex, the cornerback. He was one of the best cornerbacks in the Big Sky, and he's just a true freshman. So those are a few guys that could leave, but I don't think the whole Vandals are going to really be ravaged. I think they're going to really stay together most of the offseason.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Wazoo is looking in a similar situation where, a lot of their 17 of their 25 stars, I believe, or 25 seniors were starters or played a major role in some way. And so they're losing them, but the guys that are sticking around, like the Bobby Terrells, is kind of going to be their biggest get. They can keep him, and like Kirby Voorhees, Tony Freeman are some other players that they're going to be. The Cougar Collective, NIL Collective, and coaching staff is going to be really focused on keeping. But so it sounds like Idaho will have a little bit more retention in terms of a little bit more.
I think the FCS has
turnover,
quite a bit of retention. I do think that. But yeah, I mean, anything else you want to talk about with the Vandals or the Cougs?
I think that kind of wraps it up for this week. Obviously, just to recap, we'll find out Wazoo's bowl game fate on Sunday. For the Vandals, hiring may not happen until after Christmas or maybe before. Who knows? And so we'll keep you posted for all your Vandals and Cougar football needs. Obviously, we're getting into basketball. Basketball season's underway, and so we'll be talking about that some more, and also some high school hoops. So for Trevor Junt, I'm Sam Taylor. Thanks for listening to The Final Whistle.